I've just remembered I stopped using Discovery Bridge ambience and just went to like TOS or TNG or something, didn't I? Because it's not very good. And I think I'm realizing it's, for some reason, particularly bad today. I wonder what might be influencing that. But anyways, good morning, Samoa, and welcome to Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 6, Whistlespeak, where today, of course, we are honoring, as is tradition, on this May the 4th, we are honoring the franchise of Star Wars by just releasing and discussing a truly god awful episode of Star Trek. I mean, it's truly this Star Trek hasn't been this bad, like, actually for a while in this way, you know? Like, the Gorn episode that everyone loves was bad. But that's just, you know, that's for different reasons. This one's bad almost in, like, a lot of tropey bad ways for Star Trek. I think because it's probably doing a lot of tropes that can very easily be done poorly, and it's doing all of them poorly. But, like, literally every step of this episode, from, like, the smallest little details to the big macro scale, was bad. And it's actually impressive, like, even down to the little things that don't matter, like this line or this decision or this little way of moving, like, one character from one room to another was just badly done. But, of course, the macro scale where it all matters, this episode actually has no redeeming qualities. It was slow in all the wrong ways. In a lot of ways, it felt like watching the TOS episodes, where often they'll burn their first, like, 5-10 minutes, and they won't actually start until around the 45-minute mark, which was the standard for, like, most of the franchise. Because 45 minutes is just a good length for a sort of Star Trek-y story. This episode didn't really get going until 13 minutes in. It just kind of burned its time because it had to fill it. This is 56 minutes. I guess, is 55 standard for Star Trek now? I think for Discovery. I mean, yeah, what do you got? I'll get into this, but, like, it's a sort of episode where watching it, I'm really disappointed I'm not doing a watch through, because I'm going to forget all the ways in which this episode was bad. And, like, it's conspicuously bad, is the thing. There's so many ways where it's like, we'll get to this, but you're in a race, and you need water. These are two bad problems. This is like a core part of this episode is the race. What if pod racing, but it was slow? God, that's what this is. You also have a teleportation machine. I bet in Strange New Worlds, don't they teleport flavor back into gum? Like, you could probably teleport water into their mouths or, like, stomachs. God, no, we'll get into that. I'm not gonna get into that whole got a teleporter in a race. Do we just start at the beginning? Because, I mean, it was bad. No, we were going over the macro. Yeah. Like, the plot conspicuously didn't make sense. No, I have to. I actually have to start at the beginning, because it's just... I don't even know where to begin, so let's just start at the beginning. Of course, looking at this image of someone learned that Jupiter's got a hexagon on it and thought it looked cool. To be fair, it does look cool, but that's what you've done. Right. Where to begin? Whistlespeak. Oh, and for some reason my internet's going real kind of slow today. I think it's Paramount. It's probably not my internet. But yeah, look at that. We don't get the preview. It actually took me like 4 or 5 refreshes to get the episode to play. Oh god, I'm gonna regret this. I'm actually gonna try and get the previews up, because those are important. Just when I scan the time bar and it gives me the little clip, it's a great way to kind of skim the episodes, and for me to just make sure I'm not missing anything. Like, it was bad in the Star Trek ways, you know, you fumbled the Prime Directive. It also had, like, a bit that genuinely made me, like, when I saw it, it made me, like, recoil a bit at how at the very least, morally ambiguous it is, and it's just brushed off. You had Dr. Colbert doing a bunch of just being weird, like just coming to baffling conclusions. A lot of people did, but here we go. We've got our time bars up. This episode was off to a good start when literally the first frame of showing this vial, I went, it's the scratches, isn't it? Like, but they didn't even start talking. I saw the vial, and I went, wow, that vial's pretty scratched up, but, like, in really weird, specific, intricate ways. A little bit of cheating, because I also, like, a prop department would have to do that. I'm like, I bet that's probably a part of the clue. Like, I would investigate that. That's my first instinct. And then you learn that in the tube is just literally distilled nothing water. So yeah, the only thing left that you could possibly be analyzing, if the water is just generic, literally pure water, you can find that anywhere. The only other aspect of this clue is the container the water is in. It took them 2 days for Burnham to go, huh, this vial's real scratched up. Do you think a part of it's missing? What the fuck do you mean a part of it's missing? It's a vial! I see those scratches. It's scratched. It's not. Let's take a step back here. No, this whole episode's gonna be like this, because this episode was bad. I allow myself some of these if the episode is bad, and the whole season on the whole is not this bad. They could not have used the scratches to come up with any sort of meaning. Actually, thinking about that, they probably would have been in a Denobulan archive somewhere. If they had run the scratches through Zora, it probably would have come up. And what you could have done is run the scratches through Zora, because you highlighted them and then walked away. Like, obviously it's the solution. You could have run them through, and then they've gone, if it is, like, part of the solution, Mr. Scientist guy probably would have wiped them from the records, you know, because that would make sense. But yeah, no, those scratches the Denobulan knew about because they were on the vial. It wasn't something that was made after he died. So never mind, scratch that. If you ran them through Zora, you probably would have gotten a match to the exact planet you wanted. You wouldn't have figured out which tower you wanted. But look, if I spend this long on everything wrong with this episode, I'm going to be here literally all day. So you've got 2 days not taking the obvious answer. And really also just weakly, like, having the character bring it up and then they immediately walk away because that's a solution. We can't talk about the scratches. It's such a setting up something to be like, they want it to be a big reveal. Like, oh, this thing that was staring right in front of us, that was the answer and we just didn't see it. We had the solution all along. But anyone who's seen, like, a television before, not even an episode, just literally seen a television set, would notice that and go, yeah, the scratches are important. That's the solution. Like, they didn't even talk more about... They didn't even dismiss it and say it's wrong. Like, no, like, molecular scans have shown that it was just the vial. There was nothing attached to it. It's just old. Yeah. They didn't even do that. They just brought up the vials and then immediately walked away without any further discussion of the scratches whatsoever. Next up, you've got Burnham in the Zero Room, whatever it was called, which was a really jarring cut. Like, I got the impression that whatever the guy's name is, I never remember this guy's name, basically abducted her into the Zero Room, and Michael had a really underwhelmed reaction. This whole Zero Room concept is weird. Like, is it Deep Space Nine's holographic communication? What are you gaining from the Zero Room? Is it that you could, like, refilm these shots easily? Because we've already established in Discovery that you can have holographic phone calls. Heck, Colbert talks with his dead abuela. We'll get to that. His dead abuela later in this episode. Why doesn't... It's because he has to hand the paper over. Does the Zero Room exist solely so characters can hand each other stuff from across the universe? Because I hadn't actually thought about that. Colbert's somewhere... Not Colbert, this guy, Cronenberg, whatever, is somewhere in Federation HQ. he entered this zero room and handed Michael Burnham a notepad. This zero room that you can access seemingly at will. They never make a big deal about how hard it is. They go there when they don't have to. Like, in the start of the season, you had Admiral Vance, Burnham, and this guy meet in the zero room. Unless we're supposed to believe they're in different locations, but I'm pretty sure that was Federation HQ. And they did hand Burnham something that's never come up again. It'll come up later. It's like the key to the final door or whatever. But, this feels like it should be a way more big deal. Why do we need starships? Like, can you enter the zero room? Like, could Cronenberg enter this zero room and then leave the zero room in Discovery or any other starship or planet in the entire Federation? If we can hand each other this stuff, why is the clue on Discovery? Because that's just welcome to it getting destroyed or stolen or anything. Why doesn't Burnham hand the clues to this guy who puts, or like some clerk who runs a service that puts them in like a bank and HQ for all of the secure Starfleet stuff. And then if they need it, and they need more than like their scans, whatever, they go in the zero room and the clerk hands them the item. Well, you've got all Fleet HQ comes under attack. Just put all the stuff in the zero room and put them in a different vault. You could even have these vaults distributed across the universe in secret locations. Like, actually, this whole white room might be the single most narratively destructive piece of technology in the franchise. There's no established range. Like, if you were in the Delta Quadrant, hey, if you were in Andromeda, could you just hand something across this room? This wasn't even one of my initial complaints. I've only just come to this realization, like, this actually is like, I don't know how you build tension when this zero room exists. If the ship's about to be just, like, again, why can't people go through? Paper's organic. That is not replicated paper. That is genuine 21st century paper. Beyond that, it is specifically I believe he mentioned a specific brand of paper. Actually, amazing way to get a sponsorship just sneakily into Star Trek if it is a brand. But that's organic, and that could go through this white room. So a person should be able to go through this white room, especially because they can already enter and leave. Yeah, wow. Whoops. We just made starships redundant. Or at the very least, is the sort of thing where you'd have to bring a starship somewhere once, and then you can go there forever. I'm gonna run that by, like, buffer time or something, and try and... I'm gonna be living with that for a while, I'm gonna be honest. Come on, give me the scene with the dead abuela. This... Look at this, I've got fiber. Come here. This, when I first saw it, I assumed it was his abuela, who we've established is dead because she lived 800 years ago. In fact, I think she might have even died before they went to the future. I'm not sure, it doesn't really matter. But, especially when they confirmed that was his abuela, I genuinely felt like a cold, slightly disgusted, like, oh, we're just casually bringing people back to life with AI now, and seemingly treating them like the real people, especially when Culber's supposed to be going through some sort of spiritual thing, and especially when this episode establishes further, his abuela, I don't know if we get a name, I'll call her abuela, I know it means grandmother. Abuela was, spiritual. She had spiritual practices and might not want herself reconstructed. Like, this is without consent. I assume that the abuela didn't go up to Culber and go, Culber, if I die and it ever becomes technologically possible, I want you to recreate me with AI. This is something we can do nowadays, and it's always been received with, like, horrific backlash. It really feels like something we could be discussing and exploring, and genuinely, right, would make for a fantastic Star Trek episode. We now have the ability to bring people back, like, create artificial constructs with holograms of real people to the point where people who know that individual, literally, they can't tell. Like, yeah, that's my abuela. This is exactly what they do and say. That's a fantastic premise for a Star Trek episode. That is an amazing, like, modern day hot topic, like, sort of thing that Star Trek should be doing. It's a case where I feel abstinence is probably wrong. Like, I'm sure we can engineer cases where it's good, but you can also engineer cases where it's absolutely just flat out wrong. And there's a whole bunch of cases where there's big, goopy moral gray area where you really have to sit back and think and be kind of uncomfortable because you haven't figured out if it's right or not. This, you could get so much mileage out of this as a Star Trek episode because it is, like, generically just such a I don't know where the lines are new moral topic that I've never seen covered anywhere else. And here it's presented to us, not discussed at all, with as a Colbert mentions it's like a grief therapy method. So presumably you've had a loved one, they've just died. You can now talk to the holographic recreation of that loved one. And it's like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, ship it off. I felt cold dread. I'm not a psychiatrist or therapist, unlike Dr. Kolber. Maybe this is genuinely just objectively good, and some doctor in the chat can clarify. But even as, like, grief therapy, this feels like something that would hold a patient back from moving on. And I understand it could have its use to sort of it makes death less of a hard shock and more of a slower process that you can go through slowly. Like, it might have merit. This is something that's probably worth exploring consensually, not just your dead abuela. He casually mentions a brain scan, which I suppose oh no, we'll get back. I'm gonna set that aside. I'm just gonna bring up now that he apparently has an 800-year-old brain scan of his dead abuela. But yeah, it's the fact that he's so eager is like, this is brilliant. It's like, we can start rolling this out. A lot of you might know I'm a software engineer. Let's just pick on AI because, of course, that's the big one. That are very ethically questionable and we haven't quite sorted out. Or even more generically, like a social media platform. Why are we buffering? Am I actually buffering? I'm not dropping frames, but YouTube's complaining. I think we're good. I think that was my YouTube stream. I'm a software engineer, but, like, yeah, even running a social media, you're just working on a social media platform. There are a lot of ethically questionable things just in that, like, even to the point of, is this good for society? Can this be good for society in general? Am I doing things that are taking other people's jobs away, that are making society worse, that are fueling all the bad things that are already in our society? And I picked a career I very intentionally, like, worked around where I wouldn't have to face that. I could be very confident that I wasn't making the world worse. But it's something you have to consider, and it's something that they teach us, at least in the universities I went to. It's like, yeah, you have to consider that, hey, is this AI model I'm making actually going to, like, drop a nuke on some job market? And this seems like the example. It's not evil scientist, but it's along those lines of someone who's just not considering the consequences of their actions whatsoever and going full steam ahead. Like all the companies throwing AI into everything, like the companies actually developing the AI and then just throwing it out there in the way they do. And yeah, just especially that it's bringing the dead back to AI, and what it is, I think what it is, I believe Game Theory did a thing on this a while ago, but what really makes it dirty is I feel it's Paramount is, like, in the general public more used to the idea of AI in public, in like good, positive ways and solutions. And it's like, yay, look, AI can bring your dead relatives back to life. That's not horrific in any way. There's no potential downsides. This is just, let us use AI art, please, artists. Genuinely one of the best Star Trek episodes there are. There is. Handled right, like it's almost difficult to imagine doing it even in like an hour. You could do a movie. Like, it's such good ground that is being twisted for the sake of just trying to make this horribly ethically complicated and gray to just straight up black, bad concept acceptable. Remember I mentioned we were setting aside that brain scan. Dr. Kolber is currently going through a massive crisis of faith and thinking that perhaps there's more to the world than just the material and the scientific, and the spiritual world exists, essentially. There's sort of some spiritual element that could never be explained by science and is not material, yada, 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 yada. We will get into what actually is science later, because this episode, believe it or not, doesn't understand that either. Dr. Kolber is also intimately involved in cutting-edge research and is literally staring in the face that a brain scan, a very physical thing, is capable of creating this AI that can perfectly replicate their grandmother, down to him flat out expecting the AI to fully understand and be versed in his abuela's spiritual beliefs. You know, is consciousness a part of the brain? Is it something else? Is it physical? These are all rather unanswerable questions and very philosophical right now. But by God, if there was ever a piece of evidence that consciousness is entirely a physical thing in the brain, it is this, Dr. Kolber. It is this right here. Like, he's going through some massive crisis. Like, is there more to the universe? Is there more to thought, to life, than just the physical world? Well, no, Kolber, you can download your grandmother because you scanned her physical brain. What, Kolber, please, notice this, Kolber. It's just weird, right? Like, I'm not saying that inherently this sort of AI reconstruction of the grandmother means you can't believe in a non-physical consciousness in the spiritual world. You absolutely could. You could say, this AI, well, fantastic. Well, a lot of the brain. I mean, in Star Trek, memory is absolutely just physically engrams on the brain. A lot of consciousness is physical. It is in the brain. There's some essential element, some soul that's not in the brain. And the AI can get all of her memories and like 99% of grandma, but that 1% is the important part. Boom. There we go. It feels like it should be acknowledged that why isn't this part of Kolber's spiritual awakening? This straight up piece of evidence that there is no spiritual world. It's a little thing, right? If this was my only complaint of the episode, like many of the complaints I'm about to make, that aren't actually the main plot. But it's everything in this episode is this. It's almost impressive. And also, I love to know for Kolber, what database does he imagine that's like, oh, Professor, you just have to add my grandmother's spiritual beliefs to your database, under religion. Select all from religion. Oh, whoops, it's empty. It was weird, like how they done it. It's weird. If this was someone who died like last season or this century, it'd be less weird. But this whole scene was just weird. Just this atmosphere of weird that surrounded this episode. By the way, excellent condition of this paper. I'm not going to challenge it, but dang, this is like... Is this 1,000-year-old paper? I think that paper is about 1,000 years old. Not even yellowed. All right. So let's get into the meat. Denobula. I might have missed some stuff at the Denobula built these water towers on what I thought was a desert planet. Like, it just seemed to be a woeful violation of the Prime Directive that would kill any native life. So if that was explained early on, that this planet was gonna be, like, killed by dust storms and Denobulan saved it, fine, that's on me. If it wasn't, it's a very strange decision to put all that at the end of your episode, because I didn't understand anything about how this world worked. I thought Denobulan saw a desert planet that was dead, had a culture on it that was a desert culture, turned the whole planet tropical, the desert culture somehow survived, and this was fine, and the Federation didn't care. It was weird. I will say, I do kind of like how Burnham... I mean, even though... By God, Burnham, look at that vial. She really did kind of try and take the water thing. Like, look at... I like that there's pure distilled water, but Burnham's like, right, okay. Look for cultures where distilled water is significant. Look for cultures where there might point us to somewhere. That probably should have gotten them more planets than it really did, but... I mean, what are you gonna do? Is she gonna call Federation HQ and be like, yeah, sorry, it's water, we give up. Also, I just can't see the scratches on the vial, which are very clearly intentional. Like, even looking at the scratches, you could probably figure out, that might be counting, you know? 1 line, 2 line, 3 lines, they're building over each other, whatever. Carlos, I bet for the first time in any one of our live streams, we are gonna be in full agreement today. Welcome, Carlos. The AI cannot collect the true essence of everyone's true spiritual experience. Well, beautiful. Have Colbert say that. Have Colbert say this, and all my complaints go away, right? I'd argue if consciousness really was physical, it could. We just don't know. My argument isn't that the grandmother means that there is no spiritual world. It's that if you're debating whether or not there's sort of more to consciousness and there is a spiritual world, this really, really, really should have come up. Especially when Culber's... Well, later, I'll jump ahead a bit. Culber's whole thing at the end is that he feels more connected to the universe, and like there might be more to the consciousness, more to holding us together. And it just... Have Culber say those words and I'm fine. That was the worst clue ever. It wasn't the worst clue ever. It was the worst handling of a clue ever. I don't even... What were the other clues? Carlos, don't forget the poem that pointed to, to Vulcan, or Trill, or Betazoid, or Binar, and God knows how many other planets that I'm just not thinking of or don't remember, or we haven't seen. The other clue... Was it just coordinates? That one was just go here. I don't know. I feel like the poem might be the worst if you actually wanted the clue to be solvable and not guess and check. Because the poem just applies to more and more planets the more you think about it. But I'll agree, this one... Those numbers have got to be in a Denobulan database. Or they were wiped. So again, just bring it up. Like... If it looks like there's an obvious solution that would have gotten the people to the path they'd taken, and it's reasonable they would have taken that path, you have to explain why it didn't work. Or you at least have to show them attempting it. Like, if they showed I'm looking up the symbols on the scratch and nothing came up, I would have gone, that's okay, the scientists probably wiped them from the database. And that's all I would have said on it. You don't necessarily even need to spell everything out. But when it's the main resolution to your plot, you probably need to make it really clear why it didn't work. But probably don't have anything bad to say about this scene on the bridge. Oh, God. Hello, something bad. Well done, Star Trek. You made me hate Adira. It's just... Every sentence. They were so good in Season 3. But they've devolved. Like, they asked to be on the bridge, and they're stammering over every sentence. They're totally unsure of themselves. I think my biggest criticism is why Adira isn't working for me. Is Ezri and Hoshi are both feeling very similar vibes. Hoshi is more nervous and similar to how Adira is. Ezri is a better character, but... Both of them are nervous, unsure of themselves. There's even a line I love. I think one of the genetically engineered people, the lady who doesn't talk at all in Deep Space Nine. She describes Ezri is like one day that girl is gonna learn she's more than the sum of her parts, and on that day she's really gonna become something. Like Ezri's whole thing, especially with the Trill stuff, that hey, look at Adira was going through that as well. Was that she was really unsure of who she was, what she was doing, or even her skill in a lot of places. And by God, Hoshi. Archer's just some sort of maniac with Hoshi. Hoshi's in a position where she doesn't even want to be in space. She's afraid of being in space. And she has a captain that expects her to hear one word of an alien language and then be totally fluent in the language in its entirety. Like, and she freaks out a lot. But both those characters, even Hoshi, like, when Archer isn't being an unreasonable dick and asking literally the impossible, like, they're confident. They'll know what they're doing. When they do it, they'll get the job done. And when they're asked a question, they'll be like, yes, this is my area of expertise. Here you go. I'm pretty sure it's this. But Adira is just, like, literally stumbling over everything. Like, it's Portuguese, and she only speaks Spanish. Oh my God, that's an amazing way to describe how Adira talks. I assume Portuguese and Spanish are kind of similar. But, Dweeb Benson is simply a waste of space. They've gone backwards. They really did, because Adira in season 3 was basically the same character. Unsure of themselves, dealing a lot like how Ezri was, but they also still had that confidence where they go, no, like, I'm still an Earth security officer. I'm still like a scientist. This is what you do. But naturally was very unsure about self of everything that was going on, because by God was there a lot going on with Adira, and it worked and it was good. And then they resolved the majority of their arc with Gray in season 3, and then rather than giving Adira something new to do or really kind of exploring the unease about having your dead boyfriend inside of you at all times, they decided, okay, the only thing left is Adira's anxious. Done. And it must be so boring to act, right? Like, every one of their scenes is the same. I'm sorry, I am messing up with that quite a bit here. But as a non-binary individual myself, again, like, it just feels aggressive because they are non-binary. There's almost the element of the sort of stereotype of, like, they're unsure of themselves because they're non-binary. And they're trying to work through their, like, identity, which can be very unsure, very, like, nervy. There are a lot of that could work if there's actually more depth to the character. But Adira isn't struggling with their gender. Like, they start season 3 very confident in that. It feels like Adira is nervous because they're non-binary, which is regressive in many, many ways. They are not Starfleet trained, Earth Force, a trained soldier, if remembered. Yes, but then why were they so much more competent in season 3? I mean, that's my response. And they clearly know what they're doing. And they literally asked to be on the bridge, and now they're nervous to be on the bridge. How on earth did Rayner think Adira was ready for it? Like, it's just annoying to go through, because all their scenes just take slightly longer than they should, because they're stuttering. It's like if I did the entire stream like this, where you know what I'm gonna say. I'm just taking a little bit too long to say it. Different writers back then? I mean, did the writers, like, devolve? I don't know. Yeah. Look, if I go this long about everything wrong with this episode, we'll be here forever. And I've lost my play button. There we go. Oh my God, we've just gotten to the intro. Is that the longest cold open? A 10-minute cold open? Star Trek longest cold open. I know there was like a super long one in season 1 or 2. Nope, it's... Oh my God, Strange New Worlds has a 14-minute, 19-second teaser. A 14-minute teaser for Spock Amok. Ooh. Such Sweet Sorrow, by the way, was the other one, which was a 12-minute teaser. And so this isn't longer than either of those. The teaser recently exceeds 5 minutes. Wow. Yeah, that was a long teaser, though. I mean, it's fine. It's just can be kind of jarring when you're so long into an episode and the teaser starts. Oh my god, what is my internet today? I've got fiber. It's fiber. Oh, is it windy? Is my fiber cable just being, like, strewn all around the place? You know what? I wonder if that's it. I think they run my fiber cable up, like, power lines. I wonder if it's just being thrown about in the wind and that's having adverse effect on the internet. Oh my god, come on. Okay, I'm gonna pause my YouTube playback. I don't think I have too much to say in here. I'm sure we're setting up some Tilly Academy stuff. Or at least setting up stuff. What is my speed? Like 300 up and down-ish. I can do it. No, I'm not going to do a test. Because the stream is taking up too much internet when I do it. But yeah, I got like 300 up and down. I'm fine. I've dropped 21 frames this entire stream. It could also be Paramount, which I've had issues with before, not recently. But, yeah, it could be Paramount. You're having trouble with Paramount too? Okay, it's not just me then. They beamed down to the planet. I don't think I have too much to say. I'm sure watching along I did have a lot to say. And I'll admit, there were a few bits, just because this episode was so slow, where I was on my phone doing some stuff, because I could still pay attention. And there's two kinds of slow. There's a slow story, because it's just a slower story. Out of memory. Out of memory? It's so... Sorry, out of memory? Task manager. There's a story that's slow because it needs to take its time. You just need some room to breathe, some character's reaction to a bunch of stuff. But then there's a story that's slow because it's dragging. And it just doesn't have to be as long as it is. And every scene in this episode dragged. If I wasn't angry at it, I was noticing how slow it was. I have no idea why Chrome ran out of memory. Everything looks fine in Task Manager. Like, OBS is using a decent amount, but I'm just getting the episode back up. That might, I tell you what though, that probably explains the problems I've been having with Paramount, is that it's out of memory. Okay, where were we? They went turtle speed. I had a lot of those issues with Paramount Plus early on, but I'll admit I don't think I've had any for the past few seasons, really. But I don't know what this is. Maybe someone's DDoSing, attacking. It's Star Wars Day after all. You know, it's fair. It's fair. On First Contact Day, we all DDoS Disney, I guess. Please don't DDoS attack. Don't. Is it illegal? Is it illegal? Hang on. We're gonna do a... Is a DDoS attack illegal? Am I gonna be on a list? DDoS attacks are illegal. There we go. Don't DDoS attack people. It's illegal. I don't have too much to say. I mean, this was handled fine, I think, overall. You could have been more prepared, like way more prepared. I understand if they can't look up the culture. Even if we had a perfect understanding of this culture, we probably haven't paid attention from. It's like we have to disguise ourselves with the native population, except this time we don't plan. You know, like, it's got elements of Who Watches the Watchers done very badly. It's got elements of a bunch of stories. And every now and then, I don't think Who Watches the Watchers has an issue, but every now and then, you know, there's a little bit of a problem with how they do the Prime Directive. Not necessarily like a Dear Doctor problem, but, you know, you didn't have to do that. You know, you did this bit kind of bad, kind of weird. This is what happens if you take all the intermingling with the locals episodes, combined them, and kept all of the problems that all of them have. Just the problems, though. That's what this episode really was. Like, a little thing, again. Where are you from? I don't know. I didn't expect that anyone would ask this. What are you doing here? Ah, shit. Shit, Tilly. We only thought they'd ask us our favorite ice cream color. Why didn't we write down any of this? Why didn't we plan it? Because if they get separated and they give different stories, uh-oh, that's a bad. Also, hang on, I've just remembered, we do know a good amount about this culture because she was researching them. She knew about the Whistlespeak. Which, oh yeah, I did have a complaint about that scene. Tilly's reaction, why would they do that? What do you mean, why would they do that? It works. It's like, yeah, hi, I'm, Spanish. I speak Spanish, and, in Spanish we roll our R's. Why would they do that? Why would you roll your R's? It's just, you don't need to. I don't roll my R's. I've never needed to roll an R in my life. I say, what do you mean, Tilly? It's a language. Like, get off their backs. That was just kind of weird. Xenophobic? It was a little xenophobic. Just, like, very casually. Like, what do you mean, Tilly? It's like, and there is a reason for it, which is cool. Like, if unusual things develop and there's a reason for it. Like, I agree with Burnham that it's absolutely fascinating looking what different cultures do and why and how they came to be, especially when it's totally different from your own culture or anything you've experienced. But that comment, yeah, was just a little xenophobic and just a weird reaction to have. But not too much. I mean, we learned a bit about this society, like, you know, they deal with the dust. Actually, here's a compliment. This woman did a great job showing us about this society. Like, we learn a lot from her, and I didn't even realize we learned a lot. Because you learn that they have to manage the dust. You learn that the dust is encroaching on where they live, because the tower's failing. We learn that life is hard. Like, this woman mentions that she probably shouldn't have been out there, but if she wasn't out there, someone else would have had to be. That implies either some kind of labor shortage or just dangerous. We're also learning she's kind. That's a part of her character later on. We learn she's doing this for the sake of others because of her religion, of her beliefs. We learn that the sand is dangerous, the dust is dangerous, which comes in later in the race. I mean, we didn't really have to learn that dust in your lungs was dangerous, but this shows us the consequences. If they don't drink water during the race, this is what will happen. We also showed that the society is advanced. You know, they were able to learn. Like, I love that Burnham was like, oh, a concussive sound wave would solve that. And then when they were doing the little thing with the pots, you're like, oh, they're doing some spiritual ritual. In fact, that's almost a good check on us, at least on me. Like, it's some spiritual ritual. It's not going to be effective, and that's going to cause conflict. I thought they were going. But no. They were creating resonating sound waves that they were doing their own little non-technological sound wave thing to get to the dust out of her lungs. Brilliant. I love that bit. Like, yeah, it's set up later, we'll get to it, that this society might be moving away from religion and towards technology, which is helping Burnham's god-awful argument at the end, but that's the end. We'll get to that. And yeah, there was actually a lot. This little stretch of episode right here, other than the complaints I've already made, was good. This was a good scene. They put all their focus into this scene. Yeah, xenobiology, I remember, which was a fun callback, because the characters often don't get a lot of characterization. As Burnham was nerding out, I was like, hang on. In season 1, wasn't she like a xenoanthropologist or biologist or something? I thought it was xenoanthropology, but either one, you know, I think anyone should be fascinated on this, but that's because I like Star Trek. I guess it makes does it make more sense? I found this really weird, that the father really didn't want his daughter talking about their spiritual beliefs, like, at all. Beliefs that it's aware of in this society, but even then, like, Why doesn't he want her telling the strangers about the race? This is something that's very significant to the people. It's like a huge deal to be one of the chosen for the race. This guy, we learn, doesn't want his daughter to partake because she'll die at the end. But the more people do the race, the more, like, the less likely it is her daughter will win the race. That she hasn't even entered at this point, I guess. Like, what is his stake in getting others to not do the race? He believes the sacrifices are necessary for Rain. All he wants to do is fulfill his promise of keeping his daughter safe. Like, it was weird. Just, again, there was an element of weird this whole time. Like, people were making decisions that didn't seem to make sense. And if there is an internal logic, it was just never communicated to the audience. Is he supposed to be kind of ashamed and not wanting these people to... He never expresses that. He only ever expresses not wanting to lose his daughter, which, yeah, of course. But he even admits when he's praying to, like, his dead wife, he's like, how the hell could I say no when all of our people are suffering? He believes that this is a necessary thing to help his people. He believes the person who is getting sacrificed is helping literally the entire planet, is appeasing the gods, and he believes this so hard he is willing to break the promise he made, his wife's dying wish, to keep his daughter safe and sacrifice his daughter. His only child as well. And you can see how much this affects him later on. I just really didn't get as much. Is it because the audience isn't supposed to know about the sacrifice? Because you probably could have explained this just without mentioning the sacrifice. I've probably said enough. Not. It's quite windy in Spokane. Or no, because if the wind was affecting the download, you would expect that would affect the upload of the internet as well, and my upload's fine. This is Paramount. This is a Paramount issue. 100%. I'm just gonna put this on the screen in case it closes down for some reason. What's after this? They're walking around. They're just talking to people. I don't think I have too much to say about these intro scenes. I'll say it felt very clear. Maybe it's like the music and stuff, and I kind of get like Burnham and Tilly are like, well, what are we gonna do? When they were all eating the little cubes, I'm like, this is definitely something you don't want to eat. And they just casually are like, yep, nomp. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm playing with a quarter, and I just mimed eating the quarter. We're still optimizing my video playback experience, by the way. In the process, though, it is de-optimizing your live stream playback experience. I'm gonna have to refresh the page. We're 1917 in. Everyone remember that. I should not have refreshed the page. That usually breaks the stream. Oh, there we go. It's kind of funny. Every time I do this, it wants to start the episode from the end, not wherever I happen to be when we last left off. There we go. We got the episode back. Yeah, I think the forest was actually pretty good. I mean, the set work, the costume design, it's simple, kind of raggedy, but it's cohesive. I mean, the colors go well with the environments. Saying that, though, this episode is kind of dreary and gray in kind of a very generic way. I didn't really notice it watching it, but it might have attributed to just the slow, dull feeling of the whole thing. Yeah, we learned there's 5 more towers, so the clue could theoretically be at any one of the towers. This felt weird, though. So they set up the Nobulans, who I presume are in the Federation at this point, but it doesn't really matter. Set up these weather towers that need constant maintenance on the planet, right? Good. I'm with you. A bit weird, but maybe it just needed maintenance. So presumably they either left a team behind on the planet, or they would pop back every now and then to do maintenance. Cool. I'm on board. I'm following. At some point, Denobulans just stopped doing that. This is where it loses me. I guess if Denobulans never joined the Federation, then maybe they wouldn't tell the Federation to please go check on this planet. But surely they'd be aware that there's this planet that they should probably at least check on. Maybe they assumed like it should be dead already, but it's cold and not bother to check it all. Like, again, a lot of this doesn't seem like it was really thought out. In fact, none of this seems like it was really thought out in any way. Usually I can kind of throw off some hand-wavy thing, but I'm really struggling with this one. The Denobulans just neglected a planet and it died, and then they didn't tell anyone about it. Another weird comment from Tilly. Someone, when they said they made their water moisture towers, because again, it's Star Wars Day, this has to be Tatooine. They made their moisture farms look like a mountain. And someone's like, why would you make a moisture tower look like a mountain? What do you mean? I mean, presumably so it blended into the natural landscape and didn't look like a massive, ugly moisture tower? Hang on, if this is a pre-warp civilization, that's even more the reason. I don't know if we knew about them at the time, but, like, it was just so weird. Could you imagine if your city announced they were building something? They were building, I don't know, like a new landfill, and they decided to make it blend into the natural landscape, and going, why would they do that? I don't understand. There's no reason. If you had like a Vulcan say it, maybe. Someone super logical, but I don't know. If it was Tilly, that's hilarious, because Tilly's incredibly emotional. This is the part, where Culber wanted to see if there was some physical thing that explains away how he feels. See, I knew I'd forget parts of this experience. This is very weird to me, because Culber is like a trained therapist, psychologist, whatever. So it would imply that there's a physical... like the whole thing Culber's looking for, trying to explain why he feels good. It's worth checking, but that would imply that he believes there's a physical reason behind literally every emotion, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense to expect to find something physical. And there's a line someone says, I can't remember if it's here or it's later, where they go, basically, they can't, he's like, science can't explain why you are feeling this way, therefore it is spiritual. Excuse me one moment, let me put the keyboard out of my way. Oh, that even knocked the mic over. I'm sorry, that was me banging my head on the desk. Let me explain the problem with this that a lot of fiction does. I'm gonna be honest, actually, a lot of just people do. With an analogy, or with another example. Here's a fun science fact for you. Quantum mechanics and general relativity, or special relativity, they are our two best models to describing the universe. We know they're incomplete, but test after test after test after test after test for decades have done nothing but verify both quantum mechanics and special relativity. And as our technology gets better and better, we just verify it with more and more precision. We have never been more confident that these theories are correct than any other theory in the universe. However, quantum mechanics and general relativity are mutually exclusive. You can't glue them together. Quantum mechanics describes the very small, special relativity describes the big, and we just can't glue them together. They don't fit. Therefore, science cannot explain why general relativity and special relativity don't glue together. We don't know. Therefore, it's spiritual. Therefore, it is God. It's spiritual, it's ghosts, it's goblins, it's whatever. That is the flaw with the logic. As I said, we know it's incomplete. Either the real answer is, I mean, okay, technically it could be God just making these two like scientific theories work, but an equally valid answer is either there's some element of the universe we are currently unaware of that explains how to glue general relativity and quantum mechanics together, or we are at least partially wrong on at least one of those theories, and if we actually had the theory right, they would glue together. That's an answer. Just because science doesn't know something currently doesn't make it spiritual. It's baffling. It's a baffling take. Like, it is possible that Dr. Kolber is more in tune with God, and his life essence is now just more in tune with the universe because he shared it with another. That is entirely possible. It is also possible that actually Federation scanners can only get like 1 micron thickness, and there is in fact scarring on his frontal lobe, but at 0.5 micron thickness, and the Federation scanners just can't pick it up. That is a scientific explanation. That is a scientific explanation we don't know, but like, in the past, we didn't know why things fell down. We didn't know about gravity. That doesn't make gravity spiritual. Heck, now, well, yeah, until like the recent history, we didn't know that gravity was the curvature of space-time. That didn't mean that scientists believed, how does gravity actually work? Like, how do objects attract each other? That didn't mean they thought it was spiritual. You get this a lot with ghosts, especially whenever like sci-fi handles ghosts, where people are like, you don't believe in ghosts because you're a scientist and ghosts are against science. No, science doesn't go, oh, ghosts not real. That's not how it works. It's like, there was a time, and there still is when we get new technologies, that science will just actively try and find ghosts. But science doesn't even reject that ghosts exist. Science concludes that if ghosts are real, then they just can't interact with the world in any measurable or noticeable way that couldn't also be described by just the equations and the sort of traditional sciencey math stuff, because we just otherwise would have found them. We're saying about aliens. Aliens aren't unscientific. They're just undiscovered. That doesn't make them spiritual. That doesn't make them, like, it's other things that mean scientists don't believe in ghosts. But so many people are like, media, so many presentations, even in the real world, are like, oh, I don't believe in ghosts because ghosts are spiritual. No, that's not why I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts because it would be absurd to think that of all the people who have died and all the people who would absolutely want to believe in ghosts or want to prove that ghosts exist, or were mistreated by another person, or were murdered, or were anything. Like, if ghosts exist, we would never have unsolved crimes. All dictators and mass murderers would just be haunted into extinction, and everyone who was ridiculed their entire life for not believing in ghosts would go right on, like, every monument. Hello, I'm James Jameson. You can find my secret stash under this tree that only I would know about, and this is proof that ghosts are real because 500,000 other people have done this today. That's why I don't believe in ghosts. In the 32nd century, what quadrant was this, and why would they have any pre-warp civilization left? Oh, it's alpha or beta quadrant, but, the societies didn't all start at the same time. In the original series, we meet a tribe in, the racist episode of, just an American Indian tribe. In Enterprise, in the 22nd century, we made an American Western town. We meet, like, cave people. In Spock's brain, we meet cavemen people. Like, they wouldn't reach warp in 1,000 years. There are still pre-warp civilizations because the Federation and seemingly everyone in the galaxy believes in and respects the Prime Directive and just thinks they shouldn't interfere. It's just they've taken longer to evolve. So humanity, like, is a species, is hundreds of millions of years old. But is something more than, like, just another animal, is about 12,000 years old. It's a nothing. It's a nothing in terms of the evolution of, like, our species as a whole. And if we're saying the humanoid shape is a cause of the progenitors, you don't have to talk about the evolution of humans. You have to go back to, like, the first monkey on the planet Earth, which was probably billions of years ago, if not way, way earlier than the first human. Like, the first humanoid thing would have been, like, we are 0.00001% the history of a human. It took 50 more years to get to the planet next door. That could be centuries in advancement. Also worth pointing out that the fact that Earth has the moon we do probably helped us give a kick in the butt when it comes to space travel for a lot of reasons that are very tangential to here, but also fascinating if you want to try and look into them. We're not that evolved enough to understand these concepts now, and going forward it will happen at one point, but not in the current lifetime. I mean, theoretically, I think there could be problems that are unsolvable. But the question isn't whether these are unsolvable. It's whether in this fictitious universe, is it reasonable for Culber to be coming to the conclusions he's doing and for people to be acting the way they are. I mean, if Christianity is right, one day we'll learn because Jesus, like, the second coming of Christ is going to happen. And at that point, it's going to be pretty gosh darn obvious, Like, even religion isn't inherently unprovable depending on the religion. You just have to wait till the end of the world a lot of times. Right. This bit bothers me. I'm going to put a pin in this conversation, but this woman goes to Burnham and be like, you don't have to, like, do the race to become closer to the gods. You know that, right? And Burnham's like, yeah, but this is just something I've always wanted to do. It's not about that. She's like, cool, thumbs up. I just want to acknowledge that this woman said she doesn't believe that you have to do the race and get sacrificed to become closer with the gods because she believes that they're already around. That she believes you don't have to become closer. That's her belief. That's what she said. Culber has a 22nd century mindset. Remember that. Yeah, I have a 21st century mindset. What's your point? If we're arguing that Culber, because of his century, is less advanced or less logical about this than the people of the 32nd century, I should be less logical than Culber. Or, you could go back in time to find, I'm sure, like, Renaissance era philosophers and even before that who talk about this. You can probably find monks from the Middle Ages who talk about whether or not God is provable or not and all that sort of stuff. Because the questions I'm raising aren't religious, they're logical. And it's like, no, Burnham even has later in this episode where she says nothing you've seen today has proven that gods aren't real. That's not exactly what she says because the statement she makes is ridiculous, but she's right. Nothing they have shown her today prove that God isn't real. It proves that the gods don't bring the rain, although you could even debate that. Oh my god, Paramount, come on. Paramount, I can only talk about this for so long. Okay, no, I don't need the clip. Because we're getting to the good part. We're getting to the part I knew this episode was bad. So. Oop, hang on, it's loading. Here is pod racing but slow, right? You're in an endurance race. I'm going to paint the picture here for you. You're in an endurance race. You're in a race where you're extraordinarily thirsty because you ate some dust, and you have to get to the end, or like the Federation dies if you don't get to the end of this race. I forgot about that. That makes Tilly's actions even funnier at the end of the race. The Federation dies if you don't beat this race. You're in a race with a bunch of other people who are also really struggling because they're extraordinarily thirsty, but you can't drink. By the way, absolutely love that they placed loads of water bowls around. This isn't a race where people die. This culture isn't, like, they're committing human sacrifices, but they're not throwing away lives. They're like, here's an out. You can get out of this if you want. But yeah, you're in this race. It's vital you win. You have to win or, like, you die. Those are the stakes. And, like, this whole planet also dies. If you lose, like, everybody dies. Just this once, Rose, everybody dies. Because I guess you can't die multiple times. But anyway, you gotta get to the end. You're running through a forest where the only people are the other competitors in the race. Everyone else is already at the end of the race. Don't ask how they got there. I presume there's a shortcut. Actually, no, do ask how they got there, because I'm telling you there's a shortcut that they know about that's not on the path. But, you know, everyone's slow because they're dehydrated. If you could get a drink, you could probably win easily. You're extremely fit. You've had essentially military training. You do this sort of thing, but you can't drink or you're disqualified, right? You also have a teleporter in your goddamn pocket, Burnham! Oh my god, who decided to write a race, an episode that depends on two things? You have to be the first person at location A, and you really, really need an item. Both those problems could be easily solved with your personal teleportation device. Option 1. Fall a bit behind or just run off into the woods, right? Run slightly off the trail. Talk to the ship, which we know you can do because you later talk to the ship. Burnham, you talk to the ship. And say, hey, I need you to beam me to the ship and beam me to the end of this trail. You know where this trail is because you're in orbit. You can scan it, or you could notice where everyone is gathered at the end, or you could follow people along this trail and wait till they're getting near the end. And I need you to beam me in the woods, just in the woods, kind of next to the trail, but hidden. Right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand there. Oh, also, by the way, can I have a drink of water? I'm going to stand there and wait till I hear people coming. Then I'm going to rush out, make a big show about how sweaty I am. Maybe I'm not even going to drink. So, you know, I'm clearly dehydrated. And then I'm going to win. And they're going to be like, how the hell did you do that? It's like I found a shortcut. You know? Done. What the actual fuck, but I'm not done, because you might be going, oh, Nathan, well, this is a culturally spiritual trail. You have to walk this path. This was the path the woman from the story walked originally, and you have to walk this path. It's the rules. You have to go on this path. So if you go ahead of them, if you walk ahead of everybody else, they'll notice you didn't pass them, right? They'll be like, what the hell happened? You might be disqualified. It's too risky. Okay. Maybe I fall behind. I asked my ship for some water. I mentioned this as well. In Strange New Worlds, you know, centuries ago, they beamed flavor back into gum that was in someone's mouth. We beamed stuff onto Spock's eye. You could probably beam the water straight into their stomach or, like, along their throat. In fact, does someone do that? Do they beam something along someone's throat? I can't remember. Or, like, beam the dust out. And then you don't have the endurance problem. You can easily catch up, and people are amazed at how much of a goddamn dust runner you are. And then you've run the race legit. Carlos, I saw, wait, the teleporters didn't work. No. The teleporters couldn't get them to the top of the tower where they needed to be. However, because it was, like, titanium. Actually, wait, hang on, no. They said it was because there was an electrical field, but there was titanium walls in the chamber. However, later in this episode, Burnham beams from a control panel. Oh, wait, you're right. She did fix the control panel, didn't she? I thought the issue was that they couldn't beam to the tower, but they might be able to be... You know what? You might have me if the transporters actually didn't work this far out. Because I thought they couldn't beam into the tower. They just had to beam somewhere else. You were right that maybe that was the solution. Then too close to the tower to beam. You know, make it clear how far out this range expands. Because they did beam to where they met those people, of course, on the trail. And then pretty soon, after meeting those people, the woman had like a dust attack. They went to bed, and as far as I'm aware, they are still there. They are still in an area that is beamable. But one of the two were here. Either you lost a race when you had teleporters, or you didn't make it clear enough the parameters of the problem, which would lead audience members to potentially believe, please just use your goddamn pocket teleporter. Because they do that. They have messages of the ship. It's like, oh, we can't do that because of the thingy thing. Next fun bit. So they're walking along this forest path. Burnham sees some moss that's yellow and some moss that's green and concludes that's a mutation. There might be different species of moss. I mean, look at him. You go to my backyard. I got some yellow grass. I got some green grass. It is actually different species of grass. But anyway, let's just mutation. Good job, Burnham. That mutation means that the radiation is going this far, and therefore there is a control panel because there's some yellow moss down to a green moss. I guess it could be, but that's quite a leap to then just be right about. It's a problem that happens a lot. It's not unique to this episode or even Star Trek. But when trying to make a problem that looks really clever, like you know something, like, hey, radiation causes mutation, therefore these moss are different colors. But you don't actually have enough evidence to be, like, sure of that. It just seems like a big gamble, you know? Like, it was like, and to spot that, like, my backyard is so many colors. Like, I don't know what the heck's going in that backyard. I just bought the house. But, yes, sure looks colorful. It's like, just the little things. Little things, you know? Anyway, going forward. I like how Burnham also tells the other guy, like, I'm out. Yep, Burnham, we know. You're drinking the water, Burnham. Like, if it was radiating that much that it's increasing the mutation rate, you think there'd be more dead plants around there as well? Whatever, we're moving past it. I'm not gonna critique this so much. Like, Tilly gave her the water. Like, she risked literally everyone dying for this. However, because I guess she wanted, you know, this meant a lot to the girl. It's sweet. I'm gonna give her a lot of slack because she is delirious in this moment. She is so dehydrated. And also, I could see it just being a thing she does. Believe it or not, this is one scene I actually don't really have any complaints about. Other than it's a bit silly, she'd be willing to risk everything, but understandable. Also, I've just noticed, but I really love that hair. I don't think I've got too much else to say. Yeah, both won, so they're tied. Have we ever established those, like, cyborg contact things? She fixed the teleporter for the planet's war. Yeah, Carlos, I think you're right about the intent, but I think it was made unclear how far that teleportation extended. The other reason I think you're right is this is the chamber they need to be in. This chamber right here. You can't teleport into it because it's made of tritanium. So that would make the EM field redundant. But it wasn't really established to me that they had moved from where they started, which was like beaming down to the base of the tower. I thought they just couldn't get into the tower. So I a little more clear on that. That would be the critique. But I will be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that that's the intent. Yeah. So I didn't know exactly what the scratches looked like, but yeah, looking at those, I'm like, that's definitely the scratches on the vase, isn't it? On the vial. I don't know. I'm done. You get the gases to come and mix in a vacuum chamber. They're sucking all the air out, but those fires seem to be doing pretty fine. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done at this point. It was slow. It was boring. You had Burnham beam to the room the guy was in, when she could have beamed to the room next to the room the guy was in. We hadn't violated the Prime Directive yet. The people on the ship didn't know she was planning on violating the Prime Directive after teleporting. Why not beam to the room next to where he's in? Well, because that'd be sensible. Like, there's no way in hell that Burnham would get out of this. This is the worst Prime Directive violation. There were 2 writers for this episode, 1 guy, 1 lady. Too many I don't know, you think with 2 heads, like, they'd be able to find the gaping flaws and that the other one comes up with. But here's, right, she brings down the whole world. God isn't real. Let's break down why I have, actually, no, wait, I have a video on this. I have a video. The Prime Directive doesn't make sense, the Prime Directive does not make sense, and why it's not supposed to. It's gonna go a lot more into detail in the sentence I'm about to say. I'm quite proud of it, because helping pre-warp civilizations is good, but by God, if you do not fully know what you are doing and fully understand what the consequences are likely to be, you could destroy a civilization. Literally, you could cause extinction. You could destroy the world. That's what the Prime Directive is, right? Welcome to a textbook example of why we made the Prime Directive is eager. That's the end of the sentence. Burnham is told by that one woman that what the gods really care about is just be good. You know, that's what every religion is at the end of the day. Just be, like, good. Be what the red sweater guy. Be Mr. Rogers, you know? Just be a good neighbor. Because the lady was like, you don't need to do this to be closer with the gods because they are already there. Although, since you are willing to do this, I am fully on board and support it. From that, she concludes that it looks like some members of her society are already ready to move beyond the idea of the gods and the sacrifices and the gods bringing rain. And therefore, everything will be okay. Because as we all know, so long as some individuals are wanting to progress as a society, it happens. The Supreme Court of the United States definitely is not currently questioning whether, if really, should no one be above the law. It just doesn't happen. You know, as long as even a little bit of people are in favor of progressivism, it happens, especially when you evolve religion and tradition. Obviously, that's total BS, and neither of the pieces of evidence have shown that they're ready to move on. Like, the eager girl is eager to appease the gods and do her part in terms of her religion and her tradition, and is specifically eager to literally be sacrificed to the gods, to become one with the gods, to have them replace her breath with theirs and bring the rain. The woman who, yes, acknowledges that this religion is mainly about just be good to your fellow person, is fully on board with these sacrifices. She did the run! She did the run as a kid with a friend and is fully supportive of Michael Burnham doing this. It is fully possible that she actually desperately wants the sacrifices that, mind you, everybody believes are literally the only thing stopping the world from ending, from happening. Like, because she said she doesn't believe it's possible, this is necessary to become closer to the gods because they are already with you, which is true. She did not say, you know, this isn't necessary for the rains to come and save everybody else. You know what a good argument against, that Burnham could do would be? Hey, It's actually about to rain, and you didn't sacrifice anyone. That's the strongest case she has, but even then, well, actually, no. You know what? As we know, nobody, in particular religious, traditional people, are ever, never happens, not once. This society is gonna fall apart. Like, maybe they'll accept the sacrifices aren't necessary, but does Burnham honestly believe that they're just gonna be like, yeah, you know what? Our gods maybe do exist, but there's also technology. I'm cool with that. No, of course not. She even says nothing, her exact words are like, nothing you have seen today or we have done has proven that your gods and your beliefs aren't real. Hello, David C. Thank you. Late to the party, but working today. We'll listen later tonight. Do it when you're in like a mood to get angry or about... thank you for the $20. But yeah, we've just been celebrating Star Wars by slagging off this episode for like an hour and a half. Burnham doesn't know this. Like, first off, Burnham has straight up proved, just as much as you can prove anything, that the gods do not bring rain. It's technology. So, like, she doesn't know anything about this religion, pretty much. What if the gods, that's literally all they did. Like, the gods literally exist to bring rain. Well, suddenly, your gods don't exist. They, like, what if that was an integral part of their gods? It's like saying, actually, Jesus did exist, but he wasn't the Son of God. It's like, no, that's kind of an integral part to Jesus, at least from a Christian standpoint. Like, you can't really have the one without the other. And for all Burnham knows, she's just done that and, like, massively brought down the central pillar of the religion. I mean, actually, that's a great example, is using Christianity. Because she could theoretically have done the equivalent of absolutely prove to all Christians that Jesus didn't exist and was not the Son of God, but then also assured them that don't worry, it's okay, Christianity still is real and exists. I don't know. I think Jesus is a pretty core part to that religion. You can't just kind of pluck him out. You know, if you pluck him out, you've basically got Judaism, but with slightly different traditions. And Burnham's like, nah, man, it's good, because, you know, I made the rain go, so your society's going to be okay. And she makes massive leaps. Like, because of two individuals of this entire society, she uses bad logic to come to the oh my... Sorry, I've just had an epiphany, but she uses bad logic to come to the conclusion that enough members of her society are ready to move past the gods, the core foundation of this society, and literally everyone we have met in this story so far, a foundational belief. Therefore, the entire society will do it with no issue whatsoever. The epiphany I had is this is just the sound of thunder, but more drawn out and less obvious, because I hate the sound of thunder for the same reasons. God, that's going to be one hell of a watch-along. The Sound of Thunder is the Season 2 episode where they go to Saru's homeworld and basically tear it from the ground up. My God, The Sound of Thunder is... It's actually worse as a first context story than this. Genuinely, everyone in that story is unbelievably incompetent to the point it's almost willful negligence. No, it is willful negligence to that point. God, hey, you know, what if we induce the Vihari on literally every Kelpian on the planet because we knew Saru survived it, therefore everyone, from just females to pregnant women to people swimming or climbing ladders or performing med surgery or like eating or, you know, childs or the fetuses, they're all ready to go through Vihari with no problems whatsoever. God damn, I don't like surgery. Yeah, bad logic. No, it's pure ineptness. I mean, if you're inept and attempting logic, it is bad logic. But I think you're right, Carlos. It goes beyond, like... And the worst part is she's probably right because it's the show. It's 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 the old logic problem of like a farmer. There's a sheep farmer, right? And he's in his house, and he looks out his house, and he sees one of his sheep by the tree, a tree by his house, and he goes, "Oh, my sheep is by the tree." He now knows that. Like he goes, "My sheep is in the field with the tree." That's what he thinks. However, he didn't actually see his sheep. There was like some white cloth that was blown in the wind and got caught in his tree. And from a distance, when the farmer saw the tree, he thought it was the sheep, and so he assumed the sheep was in the field with the tree. By complete coincidence, his sheep actually is in the field with that tree, but the farmer didn't see the sheep. So the question is, does the farmer know that his sheep is in the field with the tree? Because the farmer saw something, he made a logical conclusion, that he made a logical thought process that led him to the correct conclusion. However, his thought process was wrong. This happens a lot, and I mean not just in Star Trek, but in a lot of media, and in the real life, as I just demonstrated. But it makes it really frustrating when a story is written poorly, but you know everything the characters are saying due to their horrific logic is actually correct for that reason. Because it's like you haven't learned. You haven't learned the consequences of your action. I think it could be interesting for a story to really fail, especially if they fail accidentally like this in like an early season, and then come back to that. Or even if we stuck around, I've said this before, if I could write a Star Trek, it'd be god-awful because I'm not a writer. But if I was a good writer, I would do a story kind of like Deep Space Nine in that we're in one place, for the story, but it is first contact with an alien race. Like first contact might not even be episode 1. It might be like us learning about that species and trying to figure out the best way to do first contact. And of course, there'd be strife. It'd be a divided society. They'd probably be like us, where they have a United Nations, but like the UN isn't going to stop Russia from invading Ukraine. It only has so much power. We are dealing with the one government, but there's still the major powers. Because I really want to get in that nitty gritty and the consequences. And I think that might be one of the reasons I love Deep Space Nine so much, is because we get to know Bajor. And beyond that, Ferenginar, the Dominion, we get to know these planets, and we see actions that have consequences, like good and bad, and especially the really difficult, like, I don't know which one of these choices is the right one, or even if there is a right one, or like all of our choices have good and bad. And I'd really love to get into the really nitty-gritty details of this. I'd love a Star Trek. I've said before, I'm a sucker for a first contact story. God, not this one, but a good first contact story is just mwah. I adore those. Oh yeah, and then you have the medical team. Okay, they were ready to treat oxygen deprivation. I'll give them that. They knew what was going on. But they straight treat them without Burnham's permission. I guess Raynar was like, screw it, I'm in deep enough anyway, you go. I'm basically fired as it is. Oh, that reminds me, Raynar. Someone pointed out to me, it was the Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, they pointed out that he actually is we know he's not Vulcan or Romulan, but I'm trying to find, I do have Discord open. Oh, maybe it was in the chat, actually. Yeah, they mentioned he was a species from Deep Space Nine. I don't remember it, but I said it last stream. It was on stream, now that I think about it. Moving forward, yeah, do I want to listen to the line? Because I'm sure there were just awful conclusions about the spiritual world. Again, I'm not inherently against a spiritual character. I mean, Kira was interesting. a lot to Deep Space Nine, the potential for stories they can tell. Because especially if you yourself aren't religious, well, if you aren't religious, you'll really kind of butt up with him in weird ways, and it'll really help you get you to think, and you'll be a lot more like the Starfleet officers. If you are religious, you'll really butt up against the Starfleet officers in those unique ways that you probably look up to the Starfleet officers as well. And Deep Space Nine has a lot of good episodes when it deals with the Bajoran religion. Although, God, when we get to Deep Space Nine watch-alongs, get ready for me to rant endlessly about the Federation and its wormhole alien things. It's like, God, the Federation, they're both. Listen to Jadzia. Why is this not obvious to you? If God is real, then surely, what is God if not another species? Like, rather by definition. I don't understand why you're having a hard time with this, Starfleet. I don't even remember. What does he say? I've got OBS. Hang on. What does Culber say? I'm going to just flick through. That sounded like the line. Hang on. Yeah, I mean, he's going through a spiritual awakening, which, by the way, I'm going to pause. I think it's really weakened by, Kira was really good because they were a fictitious alien religion. First off, it lets them create a lot of story potential because they get to decide the beliefs. But it's good because the reasons Culber's arc is having problems is Culber's really stuck in saying he's having a spiritual awakening and like trying to go through it. But the show can't actually make him religious unless it's an alien religion. I don't think they're going to do that because I think this is trying to introduce religion into the world of Star Trek because, as I've discussed before, it's sort of a hypocrisy in Star Trek to be all infinite diversity in infinite ways, except if you're religious, you're not allowed. So his arc can only ever go so far, especially knowing this is the last season. And I don't think they'll ever put or at least certainly not now, an explicitly Christian or Islamic or any religion character into the show because of how they'd fear reactions that get, or they'd be too nervous of stepping on toes or misrepresenting or tackling like an episode about, like, if you made him an explicitly real religious character, I feel you couldn't actually do anything with it because you'd risk as a corporation like stepping on too many toes or alienating audience. And if there's one thing Paramount needs right now, it is not alienating their audience, as small as it may be. But yeah, oh God, I gotta double Doctor Who tomorrow with this voice. The real hard one is gonna be next weekend's Doctor Who stream. We're doing the new Doctor Who's, season 1/14/40, with Ncuti Gatwa. That's gonna be a long stream because it's 2 episodes. Yeah, we're going. Oh yeah, no, that's what I wanted to point out. Because we're going to Betazoid next episode. That is important, or at least we're bringing up Betazoid a lot, because what Culber's going through, he feels more connected to the world. It's sort of like a spiritual, not that his consciousness feels more connected and more attuned to the world, and he's like, therefore, this is spiritual. I'll accept that Culber might not know this, but do you want to know where you've heard that description before? I believe it's Roxana Troy, but specifically Betazoids believe that all life is connected through some sort of unseen telepathic-y web. This basically is what telepathy work. I mean, it's a logical conclusion for a planet of telepaths to come to. But this isn't really described as a spiritual belief. This is described as like subspace. It's another layer of reality. Culber is describing, again, you could describe that spiritually, but everybody is acting like you literally cannot have these views or explore these topics without going, oh, it's religious and it's spiritual. But no, you can. It can just be an undiscovered layer of reality. It could be that consciousness is is more than just the brain. That doesn't mean it's undescribable. That just means we don't know it. We don't know yet. And that's what's really getting me about this whole spiritual arc, is it's treating unknown is unknowable and inherently unscientific. Even the unknowable isn't unscientific. I mean, is Earth the center of the universe? For the longest time was an unknowable question. Because other stars are so far away, it looks like we're the center of the universe from here, but we literally we had no way to know if we were the center of the universe because our orbit isn't big enough to see the stars move when we go around the orbit. We needed like advanced space telescopes. Well, not necessarily space, but better telescopes. For the longest time, that was an unknowable question. I'm sure I'm gonna think of one after the stream. I'm trying to think of a current unknowable question. Well, there is consciousness more than the brain is currently an unknowable question. We have no way of testing it. It's untestable, so we can never conclude if that's actually how the world works. But what's in the center of a black hole? Well, once you enter a black hole, you can't leave a black hole, so the question is inherently unknowable. There is an answer. I mean, there's something there. It's not the goblins. It's not ghosts. It's probably not God. That'd be weird if he lived in, like, a black hole. That doesn't mean it's not scientific, though. That just means we don't know what it is, and we can never know what it is. We can make... It's not that. That's the problem. Because you're right. People have been saying it's not necessarily crazy for him to get to this point. It's that it's not that he's getting to this point. It's how he and everyone else is. Because everybody is telling him, except weirdly enough his spiritual grandmother, is telling him, this is unknown, therefore it's spiritual. That's the foundation. And that's just not how anything works. Even that, the spiritual isn't unknown, like inherently. Until like, it's a century or so ago, especially in like medieval time, scientists and priests, monks were like the same job. You become a monk and that's what you do. You go study the natural world and religion simultaneously, and you study religion scientifically. These aren't two mutually exclusive worlds. This is a very modern idea that religious and science are just inherently two different things, like night and day. If you can't do one, you can't do both. You need one or the other. And that's just wrong. And it's really, really frustrating to see it displayed here. 2 hours. We did start a little late, but 2 hours on this. Actually, an hour and a half of the stream, I see it there, on this god-awful episode of Discovery. Easily the worst episode of Discovery we have had since Season 2. Even the one where, like, the Federation rejects the best peace treaty I've ever seen had good moments, I think. I don't know. I don't think it's lower than, like, Season 1 and 2's lows, but it definitely is not out of place among Season 1 and 2. As I said, I'm really getting Sound of Thunder vibes, and coming from me, that is not a compliment. I know, like, I've seen one other person complain about Sound of Thunder. It was the worst Star Trek episode I've ever seen. Now it's probably tied with, like, the Gorn baby murder one. But it's just, I saw one other person who I found on Reddit, like 2 years later when I was looking this up, and they had, like, a 10-paragraph explanation of why it was bad that covered most of the major problems I had with the episode. It's a bad one. Wait, I can like super chats? Boop. Boop. I can theoretically like super chats, but not this one. Put user in timeout. I don't think so. Anyway, yes. I've rambled enough. What's next episode? Star Trek Discovery. Oh, it's the Blood Oath one. What is it? I don't know how to say the word. Araya, whatever it is. We're in the home stretch. We're in the home stretch. Yeah. You know what? I'm looking forward to Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor Who. That's my feeling. I might have left this episode if I wasn't doing the review early. Honestly, I might have left. It was bad. It was bad. Bad, 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 bad. And honestly, is there a better way to celebrate Star Wars than bad Star Trek? Yeah, that's it. Thank you all very much for watching. Tomorrow, we've got the Ninth Doctor regenerating. Next week, more Discovery. And very special, the Ncuti Gatwa 15th Doctor stuff on Disney+. Highly recommend. Well, actually, it might be bad. It'd be amazing if it was bad. Well, it'd be remarkable if it was bad. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Hope to see you for all the stuff coming up. And I'll see you next time.